My name's John Loyens, and I'm the Chief Product Officer and co-founder of Data.World. We've been on an exciting journey here at Data.World. We're really happy to take you along on this journey. And I'm here to talk to you today about a topic that I am particularly passionate about. And this is the idea that traditional ways of thinking about data governance and traditional ways of thinking about data cataloging are actually killing your business and preventing you from building the kind of data-driven culture that you want to build at your company or organization. I'm here to convince you that we need a new way of thinking about data governance, one that prioritizes collaboration, people working together, and business outcomes rather than restrictive controls on data access and data use. So before we get going on this, I want you to pause for a second and think about what the purpose of the brakes on your car are. Are they there to slow you down? Sure they are. But what do they actually enable you to do? They actually enable you to drive your car faster, knowing that when you do need to slow down, you're going to be able to make a safe and reliable stop. More than that, let's think about the rules of the road. What are the rules of the road? The rules of the road are there to create almost a societal norm of when we get in our cars, when we press on that accelerator, when we press on that brake, when we turn that wheel, where are we supposed to put the car so that we can collaborate together with everybody else that's on the road so we can get from point A to point B safely and effectively. These rules are simple, they're consistent, and they're easy to apply in a way that makes it easy to drive, even in countries that don't even have the same set of rules that we have. You know, you can get from point A to point B, and what the rules of the road and what establishing these norms have enabled us to do in terms of transportation has been really, really impressive. So it's about time in data analytics that we focus on how we work together. And when we establish these norms, when we build these processes, and we can all start working together consistently with simple processes that enable collaborative work, you know, we can accomplish great things. And I think about, you know, good old-fashioned barn raisings where whole communities get together without plans, without really kind of, you know, a blueprint on where things go, and are able to raise these really impressive structures together as a community working together. So let's think about that in terms of data governance. Should data governance be a risk avoidance and compliance? If we thought about it in terms of a barn raising, right, our process would be don't hit your thumb with a hammer, or don't use the rusty nails, or don't run with your hacksaw. You know, you might cut somebody, right? If those were the only norms and processes that we put forth, would anybody ever get around to building that barn? No. You have to think about instead your data governance process is establishing the rules of cooperation and collaboration, the regulations by which you can effectively get a lot of data analytics work done quickly and easily in a communal way that actually encourages the dissemination of knowledge about the data analytics work that you've done. In essence, you need to think about data governance as the process of doing data and analytics work together. Now, thinking about data governance as a process rather than just a strict set of restrictions is really the first step. But what makes an effective process? If you think about how data management and enterprise information management traditionally gets done, you're talking about two sides of a coin here, where you're thinking about data governance as making sure your information is properly managed. It's about definition, enforcement, audit, and control. And you're thinking about data management as the tools and techniques you use to move the bits around, right, to achieve your goals. And then you start thinking about the people who are actually doing the work. And when you think about the people doing your work, you see titles and roles like data steward, data custodian, people on the front lines trying to manage this process. And then, you know, up on the higher end, you have your data trustees. Perhaps you have a governance council where you have a data architect sitting, kind of defining how actually things are supposed to get done, but not doing the work itself. I don't know about you, but this feels a lot like an ivory tower to me. And we know from, 30 years of software engineering best practice that ivory towers rarely actually help you achieve the kind of productivity and velocity that you're actually looking for, right? And with your data analytics work, I'd be willing to guess that a large portion of you are actually encountering one of the 5 problems of with your data supply chain that Tomas Tungus, who's a great author, whose book Winning with Data I really love and really describes in great, very business-friendly terms, what the 5 primary problems of building data supply chains are. You start with the idea of data breadlines, constantly having to ask 1 or 2 people and get in a queue just to get access to the data you need, right? You back that up with, data obscurity. Once you get that data, how do you actually understand it, right? What do the columns and values mean? That knowledge is now wrapped up with certain individuals sitting in that ivory tower that, you're now waiting on a whole iteration to get responses on, why a value is missing or what happens when a value runs out of range. Once you finally build some understanding there, the temptation is always to build your own data silo. We all know that one person at your organization has that magic spreadsheet or that Excel database or that Access database sitting off the side of their desk that is used to generate that critical sales forecast, right? It's that kind of siloification that really prevents your whole organization from learning from each other, right? What this ultimately leads to is this concept of data brawls, and I know we've all encountered that, where 2 or 3 different groups who, after slaving away on a bunch of analysis for a month, all come to a meeting with purporting to answer the same metric, but with vastly different results because they've defined the problem differently. And a brawl ensues, and we revert back to our old method of making decisions by opinion and not making decisions by data. Ultimately, this does not encourage data literacy across the organization because people aren't working together and building the shared understanding around how to do data analytics work. One thing that we see a lot at our customers and prospects at Data.World is people struggle to climb up this maturity curve because they try to get there one step at a time, right? Again, applying this ivory tower and, may I say, almost waterfall approach to building out their data-driven culture. You start with operations, infrastructure, and tools. When we started Data.World, one of the things that inspired myself and our CTO when we were trying to actually make our last company called HomeAway.com be more data-driven, when we were trying to inspire the adoption of a data-driven culture, is, we spent a lot of time building out that next great data warehouse, that data lake, the new self-serve BI tool, adding, data scientists hand over fist, and giving them the latest and greatest tools to work with. But, taking this very almost IT and engineering centric view of the world of if I build it, they will come. And if I just buy the latest and greatest, it will just solve our problems. You end up stuck in a rut. You're spinning your wheels, right? Now, if you're lucky enough to get that infrastructure built out and get everything lifted and shifted into that new infrastructure, then you want to start creating visibility around it. You want to start building a data catalog. You want to start thinking about governance. How do people access this thing? How do we come up with common definitions? Again, if you take a boil the ocean approach to this, if you start with, I've built out my entire data lake, then you're like, now I got to put the rules and regulations on top of it. What you've really done is just put a giant gate in front of all those assets you've just built. Nobody actually gets the benefit of using these things, right? And let's not even talk about getting to the point where, everybody knows how to access and use that data, where you get to reuse and reproducibility on your data analytics, and everybody truly knows what you've got, that you've got a knowledge graph of all the data assets that you've got. And the companies that have been able to do this have vastly hit market dominance, and was in fact studying what Airbnb did to encourage their data-driven culture that really led myself and Brian, our CTO, and another one of our co-founders to really ask the fundamental questions that led to the creation of Data.World. But you also see it in Netflix, Amazon. All these great data-driven cultures have created the right suite of, not only the right suite of tools, but the right processes the right governance process to enable the vast majority of their organization to participate in a data-driven culture in a fluid and easily understandable way. They've avoided the waterfall mentality that in the late 90s and early 2000s crushed the enterprise software industry. If you think back to that time, over 70% of enterprise software projects failed to make any return on their investment. Over a third of them were declared complete failures. Now, that is not where we want our data analytics investments to be. And so we need to start thinking, much like the software engineering and software development industry did, thinking much more in terms of the bazaar, right? Eric Raymond, in his seminal book, The Cathedral and Bazaar, and his musings on the effectiveness of the open source community and how they work together, has been massively influential in how we build software, on the inclusivity of software engineering, and also on how even closed source projects work. If you think about the Agile and open source movement, their revolution goes far beyond being able to stand up your own web server, but really impacting how people work together and understand how to effectively build and deploy software. And we need to adopt these same things in data analytics. So if data governance is the process by which we collaborate and work together on data analytics, Agile data governance is the process we want to adopt and use, because we know that with agility, we can win, we can work together, right? And what we encourage with Agile data governance is adopting the best practices of Agile software development, right? In Agile software development, we think about, individuals' interactions over processes and tools. We think about working software and being able to give feedback on that working software through customer collaboration over reams and reams of documentation and contract negotiation. We also acknowledge that responding to change is more important than, following our map heads down until that map takes us right off a cliff. And when we're trying to make data-driven decisions that can impact our business, responding to change in that data is, I would argue, even more important than responding to change in software requirements. So let's think about that. Let's think about how we apply that to our data analytics practice. And we think about, instead of, doing contract negotiation on how I get access to data, let's think about data consumer collaboration, actually collaborating with the analysts and data scientists on how they're getting their work done as we build out our assets, right? When we build out our assets, we want to think about how are the data scientists and analysts who are going to use our work, how are they going to give me feedback in real time on whether or not their assets are actually solving the problem and building that insight? How are we going to document that in a way that we can do it while we work rather than before doing any work, right? These are things that are important to think about. And if Agile is the right way to do software development, I'm here to say that Agile is the right way to do data governance. It's the right process to adopt for all of our data analytics, collaboration, reproducibility, and reusability. And it'll be that thing that actually gets us to that promised land, right? We have to think about going from defense to offense. We have to think about data governance being more than the rule that says don't hit your thumb with the hammer, and more about how to use that hammer in the first place and the building that we want to build with it, right? By thinking about data governance as making sure that our information is properly managed by having simple and consistent process to apply as data producers and consumers work together, right? And that we need to move to a world of data democratization, making sure that the data is readily available quickly and fluidly and without friction in a secure way. Then we can get to a place where we can start talking about data literacy and true data-driven organizations. Why? Because as we give people consistent, easy to understand process to work together, to accomplish their actual business goals, as we start thinking about making access more both secure, having the right breaks to use at the right time, but friction-free, right? People will start learning from each other, actually building true organizational data literacy, becoming a true data-driven organization. We have to pivot from data islands to data insights, right? We have to recognize that, building a culture around this stuff, a culture of collaboration with simple and easy to follow rules right, that encourage iteration and understanding, right, is key to building that culture and to driving value from data, right? And if you start thinking about governance as the process by which you do that, having a great process that is inclusive and participatory will be what separates you from the pack. It will be what gets you to that promised land, right? That keeps people working together rather than discourages them from doing data work. And then you also have to think about technology as an enabler for doing this process and start thinking about putting people back at the center of that technology, right? Rather than thinking about it as yet another bit of infrastructure build out. So when we start thinking about the Agile data governance process, like any great process, people are at the center. Let's think about our team first. Let's think about how we're going to get our data producers and our data consumers together more effectively. And let's acknowledge that these roles need to be flexible. Like a great like a great Agile software development process, a great Agile data governance process brings the stakeholders and the people building the asset together. They are working together, constantly getting feedback, constantly iterating. They're in the trenches together, and we acknowledge all the different personas and roles, and we acknowledge that these roles are flexible. And by establishing that collaboration, we know that we can deliver value more effectively and more efficiently and earlier on in the process. Now, how do we do that? How do we kick this process off? We need to make sure that we are building an analytics backlog that's focused on business questions and on the use cases that the business itself wants to accomplish using the data assets that we're building. I think we need to think about doing Agile data sprints in a way where we've built an effective curation and data asset backlog that we want to build out, right? And that we prioritize that based on end user business value, on what is the work that the analysts and data scientists actually need to do. What are they looking to accomplish this week? Let's build our processes, our documentation, and capture knowledge around those use cases, around those questions, around a prioritized backlog around those things so we can actually get going. I've already said it. You need to collaborate. You need to foster that collaboration and that early release of these assets, these curated assets that you're building. You need to get them in the hands of the analysts and the data scientists, the people doing the work, so that you can refine that as if it's a full product, right? You need to adopt the best practices of software engineering, doing peer review, contextualizing those assets through real-time documentation, and capturing the knowledge as the work is actually done. This ultimately leads to a place where consumers can evangelize those assets, where you can have a system watching what assets are actually popular, building community around them within your organization, constantly improving the accessibility, and getting people really hands-on with those assets. And if you do that, you'll have the opportunity to measure and audit what's effective, right? We should be data-driven about our data. And when we become data-driven about our data, we know where we can target our data producer time and energy, the time and energy that DBAs and data engineers and data stewards are spending to improve those assets that people are getting real value out of, getting questions actually answered. And we'll only know that when people build analytics and try to build data science programs on top of these things through the development of working insights, which gives us the opportunity to iterate, right? This is what a solid Agile data governance process looks like. Now, there should be effective controls. You need to be able to work in a secure way that makes everybody feel safe. That's really important, but it needs to be consistent and friction-free all at the same time. Now, if you do this, right, if instead of trying to boil the ocean and make sure all of these things, building your workflows, building your process, if you're working from an ivory tower, you want to aim for perfection. You'll spend a lot of time defining all of this stuff for all of your data assets all at once, right? It will be a while before you realize any kind of value out of any data cataloging or data governance project. Instead, if you focus on actual business value, on actual analytics questions that need to get answered, and you work at defining those norms and those rules one at a time, then documenting the asset and releasing the assets that get used for those things, Then you apply those same sets of principles and rules to each subsequent use case and refine them time over time. You're going to get to value, and you're going to see business value so much faster. And through great inclusivity, actually bring your whole organization along for the ride, right? You're going to bring people's expertise and knowledge about different data assets to bear. You're going to get greater documentation and reusability out of it. And on top of that, if you focus on user friendliness of both your tool chain and the processes by which you go using those tools, more people are going to want to participate, right? You need to think about things that are going to encourage participation in this process, not discourage it. It's real tempting to talk about how AI and ML might just magically make our problem go away. But you really only need to think about that if you're trying to, again, boil the ocean. If you're looking at a sea of data assets that need classification, yeah, you can apply AI and ML to them, and it can be effective to provide some fast filtering on what assets are valuable. But before you can start applying real and more advanced AI and ML, you need to put people back at the center of your process, because it's the people that have the knowledge that can actually train those AI and ML models to be able to create these self-documenting assets that everybody wants, right? But if you don't think about this in terms of people first and building a tool that supports a great and agile data governance process, you are not going to realize the value of any ML or AI-driven features to help with any of this role or policy enforcement that you want to do. If you adopt this model, if you adopt agile data governance the way we think it should be adopted, right? You are going to solve all of these problems that are preventing your data supply chain from being really efficient, right? You're going to add speed by making your data more discoverable, more open. You're going to solve data silos by giving people a place and a process by which they can collaborate and explain their work to other people. You'll solve data obscurity by creating a place where people can come to understand about the data, and a process that encourages group understanding and collaboration, which ultimately leads to a reduction of data brawls, since all this work is getting done in the open in really transparent ways. By the time we arrive at that meeting to make a decision, everybody's actually already converged on the meaning and understanding of the data and the methodologies used to produce the analysis. Now, if you want to adopt these processes, much like the software engineering and development lifecycle required us to adopt new tools and best practices, you're going to have to start thinking about your tool chain in different ways. You're going to have to start thinking about tools that encourage inclusive, transparent collaboration and real-time knowledge capture, rather than the traditional top-down command and control style governance tools or data catalogs that you might be used to. This new set of tools is going to let you build that house that encourages collaboration so much faster. And we feel that here at Data.World, we've built the first of these next generation platforms to encourage and to put people back at the center and to encourage the development of these great and consistent and easy to use and frictionless processes that we're calling agile data governance. Right? Where you can use more of what you have, reuse the data analytics work that you have, make everyone in your organization smarter, connect and align everyone, and most importantly, get everybody on the same page working together. Because we know data analytics is better together. We know that if an organization is going to make data-driven, great, fast, effective data-driven decisions, you need to work together. It's time to turn data analytics into a team sport, and it's time to define the rules of the sport in a way that we know will be effective and we'll learn from the past from software engineering together. We are going to work together on this. We are going to adopt agile data governance, and it's going to be the thing that finally unlocks that data-driven culture that you're looking for. Hope you enjoy the rest of the event. Again, my name's John. I'm really easy to get a hold of. I love having these conversations. We're going to be available all day in the Slack channels and in Q&A and all the different channels that we have. Thank you for coming. We're so excited. Thank you for being on this journey with us together. We really appreciate the time and the energy and the passion that you have for this space.